The Phillies bullpen has become a clear weakness for this baseball team that has been further maximized by the suspension of Jose Alvarado and the underperformance of players like Jordan Romano. And with the trade deadline approaching, Dave Dombrowski has a little bit of time to start getting cooking. Well, we have some new reports connecting them to some familiar trade faces, with Dennis Santana leading the charge from the Pittsburgh Pirates. I do want to dive into the latest in this video here, as well as talk about the Phillies bullpen as a whole and why action needs to occur. As things currently sit, let's take a look at this Phillies bullpen, which of course Jordan Romano right at the top of the list here. I think we know the deal with Romano to this point, a guy who has not lived up to the lofty expectations that were brought in when he did sign that contract. Matt Strom, a guy who I still believe in, was an all-star last year, but has had a down season by his standards to some regards. Still a guy that I do trust from a playoff perspective and will be counted on as a high leverage arm, but worth noting there. Orion Kirkring, believing more and more. I know there are some Kirkring skeptics in the comments and in the Phillies, world there, but I'm a believer in what Orion is doing, and I will say the Phillies are really testing him. They're throwing him some brutal spots this year, and for the most part, he's gotten them out of some jams. Joe Ross, another guy that was brought in this offseason here, and while I'm not out on Joe Ross entirely, I don't think he's knocking down the door of being a high leverage pitcher in the way that one would hope. That he is a guy that can fill a variety of roles, can pitch multiple innings for stretches, and can be a little bit of that flex guy, but a guy that I'm not locked in needs to be a part of this playoff equation. Tanner Banks, shout out to Tanner Banks. That is a guy who's earned a bit of my respect in recent games, has certainly been thrown in more of a high leverage role since Alvarado went down due to that suspension there, and it has mostly backed it up. I do think Tanner Banks is just fine, a guy that can be a part of this rotation, but another lefty that we are throwing in the mix here. Now, Daniel Robert, not much optimism from me there. I think we know exactly who he is at this point in the game, and a guy that should not and will not be on the playoff bullpen here. Taijuan Walker, same story there, that I think when push comes to shove, that this guy will be left off the roster from a postseason perspective. And Max Lazar, while I've been a little bit impressed with what he's brought to the table this time when coming to the major leagues, still not a guy I think we can count on by any means. And I understand the pitch to some regard is that when the starting rotation gets thinned down from a playoff perspective, a guy like Jesus Luzardo is likely heading to the bullpen. And that's a high leverage arm that you could potentially count on. It is a bit different out there, and I'm hesitant to, for sure, believe those guys can translate in the same way. A guy like Aaron Nola, frankly, I don't see the way the stuff works out of the bullpen. And if he does not return to the caliber of starter that he's proven to be in years past, when he does return from this injury, we're going to have a tough conversation there. Ranger Suarez, while he can absolutely do it out of the bullpen, are you ready to sacrifice what he's given to you from a starting pitching perspective? Because the dude has been one of the best pitchers in baseball in recent games here. Now, this brings us to the first report that I did want to circle here. A familiar name that has come to the table. This coming from Andrew Filipponi here. This is a Pittsburgh radio host who's been really in tune and really pushing that this is happening here. And he tweets out, report, the Phillies and Pirates have had trade conversations about closer David Bednar and setup man Dennis Santana. The feeling is Philly could want both in a deal. Stay tuned. Now, to give a little more backstory to the report here, I want to start off with some of the write-up, and it says this coming from the Good Fight here that states, we've seen Bednar on the rumor mill for many years, but Pittsburgh has failed to pull the trigger. Maybe they thought they could win in years past, but it seems like they missed their chance to truly capitalize on his value. He had a bad year last year and was even demoted to the minors this year, but something has clicked back in place. Since returning to the majors, he's thrown 27 2/3 innings, struck out 40, and only walked 6, posting a 1.95 ERA in that time. More importantly, the go-fairness he struggled with has disappeared. He's allowed 1 home run since April 19th. Santana has been even better. This year, he's pitched 36 innings, striking out 28 and walking only 6, good for a 1.50 ERA on the year and a 1.8 BWAR. Very solid there. One might think a lot of work has been done with the smoke and mirrors, but his peripheral stuff suggests that he's been just fine and that he has shown the capacity to keep it up all year long. Adding these two would give the bullpen a significant upgrade over what they have now. It would also likely mean a solid return going back to Pittsburgh. Not only are these two of the top arms on the market, they both have team control beyond this season. That's going to up the ante, particularly if they are dealt together. Now, that is a point that I did want to hit on here, as you do have to factor in contracts whenever we start to make these type of evaluations, and both these guys do have team control in a way that should be appealing to the Phillies' perspective. That also is something that does drive up the market. And this dangerous dance that we're starting to see from the Phillies is they've been completely non-committal on including prospects in any sort of trade. They've been very keep things close, not willing to send out these future names they believe in. And I get that to some regard, but you can't do it all, man. You can't contend in the short term and go all in while preserving your future. There is a little bit of one or the other, and I do think we're at a current point that the more I sit back you just have to give this Phillies team a chance. That Bryce Harper is not getting younger. Kyle Schwarber may not even be in a Phillies uniform next year. Trey Turner finally playing like the player they paid him to be when they did hand him that monstrous contract. There's a lot of moving parts on this Phillies team, and I think one way or another that next year we're looking at a pretty drastically different roster, and I think you got to give these boys all the opportunity to be successful from a playoff perspective. Now, a couple other factors I did want to go on, primarily discussing the contracts here. Now, this article states he looked at a number of players, including two Pirates right-hand relief pitchers in Dennis Santana and David Bednar. Santana is earning $1.4 million this season and still has 2 more years of arbitration, making him desirable for team control for the Phillies. He also has had a strong season with the Pirates, with a 1.86 ERA over 20 appearances and 19.1 innings pitched, just 4 earned runs allowed. This obviously being written a little bit earlier here, and Santana excelled with the Pirates after they claimed him off waivers on June 9th, 2024. He finished the end of the campaign, so this being last year, with a 2.44 ERA over 39 appearances and 44.1 innings pitched, only 12 earned runs allowed, 50 strikeouts to 11 walks, and an opposing batting average of 192. That is really good stuff. Now to continue on, Feinstein sees Bednar as, quote, the most intriguing early season trade option for the Phillies following a strong comeback after a poor start, and that he made $5 million this season with 1 more year of arbitration. Bednar struggled in the beginning of the season in his first series versus Miami Marlins at Lone Depot Park, where he lost 2 games on walk-offs and allowed a 2 home run and a save, the only win of the series. The Pirates sent Bednar down to AAA in Indianapolis on April 1st before bringing him back up on April 19th. Bednar has had 10 scoreless outings out of the 14 that he's pitched in since returning to Pittsburgh, plus 3 saves in 3 opportunities. He's a 3.65 ERA over 12.1 innings pitched, allowing 5 earned runs with 20 strikeouts to 1 walk. Now, these are 2 players that while they both play for the Pirates and while they're both right-handed, I think are very different in the way that we have to approach them and their outlook, both from a trade perspective and how they would be used in the bullpen. Now, Bednar is a name that has been linked to the Phillies for years to this point. Is a guy that has a very cool walkout. He has the closer presence, the aura, that he has a bit of that. But I do worry that this is sort of the end of the line to an extent from a production standpoint. That yes, it is moving in the right direction, that since he got sent down earlier this year, that something seems to have clicked. But I do wonder if that is sort of worried that things could fall off the table. And once again, his numbers in the season-long standpoint, he's pitched 28.2 innings, 41 strikeouts, 24 hits allowed, dropped down to a 2.83 ERA and a 1.16 whip. I will say these numbers are looking far better than they were a couple weeks ago. But for me, Dennis Santana is the guy that I really have eyes on. Younger at 29 years old, more team control. He's pitched in 36 games this season, 36 innings pitched, 28 strikeouts, 22 hits allowed, a 1.50 ERA and a .778 whip. Now I understand that is a different ball game when you're pitching in Citizens Bank Park in October compared to the Pittsburgh Pirates, and shout out to the stadium there, which is my all-time favorite baseball stadium. It's a different setting, it's a different mentality, and it's a different energy there. We don't know what Dennis Santana can fully bring to the table there, but my feeling is this guy does have it in him, that he does have a little bit of that I'm ready for the big moment, that I've been really impressed every time that I've seen him pitch. There is a little bit of presence in him as well. And I also think from the Phillies perspective that when you do look at the bullpen arms that we have once again here, that they've been very committed to this concept of not having a true closer. When you look at Bednar, that is a guy that plugs in as the closer. And while that's appealing to me individually, that I like having a guy that you need to go to in the 9th inning, that is your guy that's going to shut things down, Rob Thomson's been very expressive, and we're going to play the matchups. We're going to do whatever is best, and I do wonder if a guy like Dennis Santana, who's a bit more malleable in what his role can be, what inning he's pitched, if that is more intriguing to them. If they want to swing for the fences and get both these guys, you can sign me up, but I do find it a bit hard to believe that Dave Dombrowski would be willing to pay that type of premium based on what his actions have shown to this point. But to me, this is very encouraging, and we're beginning to hear those whispers start to heat up a little more. The trade deadline is looming. There's going to be a lot of decisions still to be made, and I think we got to be honest about it, honest with ourselves here. That the bullpen currently is not good enough. If you believe this Phillies team has remotely a chance at contending for a World Series, it is on Dave Dombrowski to give them every single asset and every single position that he can to make sure that they have their best chance of doing that. The bullpen, in my eyes, needs to be right near the top of the list. We can have an outfield discussion at the same time. That is certainly in play. And if you can get like a legitimate starting caliber outfielder in the way that they do not have on roster with Max Kepler, with Brandon Marsh, with Johan Rojas there, that you can make that case as well. But I do think that if they go through this trade deadline without at least adding some type of arm, it would be a massive mistake by this Phillies team. And I'm hopeful that Dennis Santana could be that overall fix there. But let me know what you guys think about these names. I know we've talked about them on the channel before. I'm buying the Dennis Santana experience. That is the guy that is number one on my list from a bullpen reliever perspective. The stuff looks filthy to me. He's got a presence. I like that he can pitch in different roles there. I'm in on Dennis Santana, less, I guess, all in on Bednar, but certainly would take both in a package and really rebuild this bullpen. So we'll see what Dave Dombrowski ultimately pulls the trigger on, but I'm in on the Dennis Santana experience and hope Dave Dombrowski views things the same way. Let me know what you guys think about each of those guys in the comments. Drop your thoughts below. As always, appreciate each and every one of you guys tuning in. If you have not already, make sure you're dropping a like on this video, subscribing to us here on Phillies Digest. I'll be back talking to you next time, hopefully with some real Phillies news, some real trades going down. I'm getting itchy. I'm ready for Dave Dombrowski to officially make some calls, make some decisions. Why wait for the trade deadline when you can help this team right now? That's what I'm going to sleep on tonight.